The orange juice was cold when it hit Chioma's head. It soaked into her hair, ran down her scalp, and dripped into her eyes before she could even react. Sticky. Sweet. Humiliating. She sat frozen at the small cafe table. Trevor stood over her, the empty glass still in his hand, his face red with rage, his fingers shaking inches from her face. "You are pathetic," he said loudly. "Do you know that? Absolutely pathetic." Chioma's hands were clenched in her lap, her knuckles white. Orange juice dripped from her hair onto her white blouse, staining it bright and ugly. One by one, conversations around them stopped. The cafe went silent. In the far corner, a man in a dark gray suit paused mid-sip of his tea. The cup froze halfway to his mouth as he looked up. "I have wasted 3 years of my life on you," Trevor continued. 3 years trying to make you into someone worth being with. And you've given me nothing. Nothing but excuses. Tears mixed with the juice on Chioma's face. Her chest tightened. She tried to speak, but only a broken gasp came out. "Look at you," Trevor sneered. "You can't even defend yourself. You just sit there and cry like a child." A phone camera flashed near the window. The man in the corner slowly removed his glasses and set them down. His eyes darkened. "Trevor, please," Chioma whispered. "Please stop. Please stop," Trevor mocked. "That's all you ever do. Beg." He slammed the glass onto the table and walked out. The bell chimed as the door shut behind him. Chioma sat shaking, juice dripping from her hair, tears streaming down her face while strangers stared. No one helped. No one spoke. The man in the corner stood. He crossed the cafe quietly and stopped beside her table. After a moment, he held out a napkin. "Here," he said softly. Chioma looked up, mascara streaked, eyes swollen. "For your hair," he added. Her hand trembled as she took it. She pressed it against her hair, trying to soak up some of the juice, but it was already too saturated to do much good. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, and her voice was so hoarse it barely sounded like her. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a business card. He set it down on the table in front of her with careful precision. "If you need help," he said quietly, "call me." Chioma looked down at the card and then back up at him. Her expression was confused and hurt and completely overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. "I do not need your pity," she said, and her voice broke on the last word. "It is not pity," he said. "Then what is it?" He was quiet for a moment, and his dark eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her breath catch despite her tears. "Recognition," he said finally. Before she could ask what that meant, he turned and walked back to his table. He left several bills on the table beside his tea, more than enough to cover the cost, and then he walked out of the cafe without looking back. Chioma sat there holding the damp napkin in one hand and the business card in the other. She stared down at the card through her tears. It was simple and professional, with black text printed on white cardstock. She had no idea who he was or why he had helped her. But something about the way he had looked at her, like he actually saw her as a person and not just a spectacle to gawk at, made her chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with Trevor's cruelty. She stood up on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. She could feel everyone still staring at her, could hear the whispers starting up again now that the stranger had left. She shoved the business card into her pocket and ran toward the door, leaving the soaked napkin on the table behind her. Behind her, the cafe slowly returned to normal. People went back to their conversations and their meals. The moment was already fading from their minds, becoming just another piece of drama they would tell their friends about later. But for Chioma, it was the worst moment of her life so far. And for Shin Dae-young, walking down the street with his hands in his pockets, it was the moment everything changed. The next morning arrived gray and overcast. Shin Dae-young sat behind his large desk on the 42nd floor of a gleaming office building in the financial district. The office was spacious and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. Expensive abstract art hung on the walls, and the furniture was all sleek and minimal, chosen more for its ability to intimidate than for comfort. But Shin Dae-young was not paying attention to any of that this morning. His mind kept drifting back to the woman in the cafe, to the way she had looked so small and broken while everyone around her did nothing but watch. His phone buzzed on the desk in front of him. He glanced down at the screen and saw a message from Park, one of his most trusted men. "He's here." Shin Dae-young pressed the button on his desk intercom without taking his eyes off the window. "Send him in." The door to his office opened a moment later. Park entered first, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. He was a solid man in his late 30s with a scar running down the left side of his face from his temple to his jaw. He stepped to the side and gestured for the person behind him to enter. Trevor walked into the office with hesitant steps. His eyes went wide as he looked around at the expensive furnishings and the stunning view. He was wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt, and his hair looked like he had not bothered to comb it this morning. There were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he had not slept well. "Mr. Shin," Trevor said, and his voice was uncertain and a little shaky. "I got your message saying you wanted to see me." Shin Dae-young gestured to the chair positioned across from his desk. "Sit down. Before we continue, can I ask you to do me a favor? If you have not watched part 1 yet, please go back and watch it first. The link is pinned in the comment section below. You will be missing the entire wedding scene where Trevor humiliated Chioma at the altar, threw the ring at her, and walked out in front of 300 people. You will miss how Shin Dae-young walked into that church like he owned it and announced he would marry her instead. Trust me, you need that context for what is about to happen next. Also, drop a comment below and let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you are enjoying this story so far, and subscribe to the channel because I promise you this story is about to get very interesting. The twists, the revelations, the drama that is coming will have you on the edge of your seat. Now let us continue. Trevor hesitated for a moment, clearly unsure of what was happening, and then he crossed the room and sat down in the indicated chair. He perched on the very edge of it like he was preparing to bolt at any second. Park closed the door with a quiet click and then took up a position beside it. He crossed his arms over his chest and stood there like a statue, his face completely blank. Shin Dae-young said nothing for a long moment. He just looked at Trevor, letting the silence stretch out until Trevor started to shift uncomfortably in his seat. "Do you remember who I am?" Shin Dae-young asked finally. Trevor swallowed hard enough that his Adam's apple bobbed visibly. "I know who you are. I know that I owe you money. You owe me $150,000, Shin Dae-young said, and his voice was calm and matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. Plus interest that has been accumulating for the past 8 months. The total is now $173,000. Trevor's face went pale, all the color draining from his cheeks in an instant. "I am working on getting it together. I swear I am. I just need a little more time to." "You have been saying that for 8 months now," Shin Dae-young interrupted. I know, but I have a plan now. I am going to get the money. I just need maybe another month or two to." "You were at the Spring Street Cafe yesterday afternoon," Shin Dae-young said, cutting him off again. Trevor blinked, clearly thrown off by the sudden change of subject. "What?" "The cafe on Spring Street. Yesterday afternoon around 2:30. You were there with a woman." Recognition dawned on Trevor's face, and his expression shifted from confusion to defensiveness in an instant. "What does that have to do with anything? That is my personal business." You poured orange juice on her head. Trevor's jaw tightened, and his hands gripped the armrests of the chair. "That is none of your business. She deserved it. You humiliated her in front of a room full of people," Shin Dae-young continued, and though his voice remained calm, there was an edge to it now, sharp and cold. "You called her pathetic. You told her she was worthless. You made her cry while strangers recorded it on their phones. She has been driving me crazy for months," Trevor said, and his voice rose slightly in volume. "Always nagging me about stupid things. Always complaining. I finally had enough, and I told her the truth." Shin Dae-young's expression did not change at all, but something flickered deep in his eyes. Something dark and dangerous. "What is her name?" he asked. "Why do you care about any of this? What is her name?" Shin Dae-young repeated, and though he did not raise his voice, the command in it was unmistakable. Trevor hesitated, then said, "Chioma." Shin Dae-young nodded slowly. "Chioma. And you are planning to marry her in 3 weeks. Trevor's eyes widened in shock. How do you know that? How do you know anything about my wedding? I make it my business to know things about the people who owe me money, Shin Dae-young said. You sent out invitations 2 months ago. You booked St. Mary's Church. You have already paid deposits on the flowers and the catering. I still do not understand what my wedding has to do with my debt, Trevor said. Shin Dae-young leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers together. I am going to make you an offer. What kind of offer? I am going to forgive your debt. All of it. $173,000. Gone completely. Trevor's mouth fell open. He stared at Shin Dae-young like he was trying to determine if this was some kind of joke. You are serious right now? Completely serious. What is the catch? There has to be a catch. You walk away from Chioma, Shin Dae-young said, and his voice was flat and final. You cancel the wedding. You break up with her. You disappear from her life completely and permanently. Trevor stared at him in stunned silence for several long seconds. You want me to leave her? Yes. Why would you possibly care about my relationship? Do you love her? Shin Dae-young asked instead of answering. The question seemed to catch Trevor completely off guard. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked down at his hands. We have been together for 3 years. That is not what I asked you. Trevor shifted in his seat. She is a good person, I guess. But she can be really difficult sometimes. She does not always listen to what I tell her. She does not always do what I need her to do. So you do not love her. I did not say that, Trevor protested. You did not have to say it, Shin Dae-young said, and he leaned forward slightly. Let me be very clear with you, Trevor. You do not love that woman. You treat her like she is an inconvenience in your life. You humiliate her in public places. You make her feel small and worthless. Those are not the actions of someone who loves another person. Trevor's face flushed red. You do not know anything about us or our relationship. I know enough, Shin Dae-young said. I know that she deserves significantly better than what you are giving her. And I know that if you marry her, you will continue to hurt her in worse and worse ways for the rest of her life. So what? You are doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Trevor's voice was bitter now. You are trying to play the hero? I am giving you a simple business transaction, Shin Dae-young said calmly. Walk away from her, and your debt is completely forgiven. Marry her, and I will collect every penny you owe me with full interest. And I will make absolutely certain that you regret every single day you spend with her. The threat hung in the air between them, quiet but unmistakable. Trevor's hands were shaking now, where they gripped the armrests. He looked at Shin Dae-young with a mixture of fear and anger. You cannot just tell me who I can and cannot be with. That is not how this works. I am not telling you anything, Shin Dae-young said. I am offering you a choice. A business transaction. You are free to accept it or reject it. Trevor stood up abruptly, and his chair scraped loudly against the floor. This whole thing is completely insane. Perhaps it is, Shin Dae-young agreed. But the offer stands regardless. Take it or leave it. Trevor paced across the room toward the windows. He ran his hands through his hair, making it stick up even more. Shin Dae-young watched him with the same calm, neutral expression, not moving at all, not speaking, just waiting. Finally, Trevor turned back around to face him. If I agree to this, you really will forgive the entire debt? All 173,000. Every single penny. And after that you will leave me alone completely? As long as you stay away from her permanently, yes. Trevor was quiet for a long moment, and Shin Dae-young could practically see the wheels turning in his head as he calculated his options and weighed his choices. Fine, Trevor said finally. I will do it. I will break up with her before the wedding. That is not good enough. What do you mean? You will not just break up with her quietly, Shin Dae-young said. You will humiliate her. Publicly. At the wedding itself. Trevor's eyes went wide with shock. You want me to leave her at the altar? Yes. That is incredibly cruel. Is it more cruel than marrying her and then spending the next 40 years making her absolutely miserable? Shin Dae-young asked. Because that is exactly what you would do if you went through with this wedding. We both know it. Trevor looked like he wanted to argue, but he did not say anything. Somewhere deep down, He knew that Shin Dae-young was right. Why does it have to happen at the wedding? Trevor asked quietly. Because it needs to be final and public, Shin Dae-young explained. It needs to be a moment that she cannot ignore or rationalize away later. She needs to see with absolute clarity exactly what kind of man you are, so that when you inevitably try to come back to her in a few months, she will not take you back. You have really thought all of this through, have you not? I have. Trevor laughed, but it was a harsh and bitter sound with no real humor in it. You are actually crazy. You know that. Shin Dae-young did not respond to that. Trevor shook his head slowly. Fine. Whatever. I will do it exactly the way you want. I will leave her at the altar in front of everyone. And then after that I never want to see you or hear from you ever again. There is one more thing, Shin Dae-young said. What now? When you do it, you will throw the wedding ring at her. You will take the microphone from the priest. You will make absolutely certain that every single person in that church knows exactly what kind of man you truly are. Trevor's face went pale again. You want me to completely destroy her. I want you to set her free, Shin Dae-young said quietly. Trevor stared at him for a long moment, and then he turned and walked toward the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle and looked back over his shoulder. You are not really doing this for her benefit, are you? Trevor said. You are doing this for yourself. Whatever you have planned, it is not actually about saving her from me. It is about something else entirely. Shin Dae-young met his gaze steadily and did not blink. Does it actually matter why I am doing it? Trevor stared at him for a moment longer, and then he shook his head and walked out of the office. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Park was still standing by the door. He cleared his throat. Sir, if I may ask, what exactly are you planning to do after he leaves her? Shin Dae-young was quiet for a long moment, still looking at the closed door. Then he said, something I should have done for someone else a long time ago. And what is that, sir? Make things right. Park nodded slowly. He had worked for Shin Dae-young for 7 years, and he had learned when to ask questions and when to simply accept what he was told. Shin Dae-young picked up his phone and dialed a number. It rang 3 times before someone answered on the other end. I need information on a woman, Shin Dae-young said into the phone. Her name is Chioma. I need to know everything about her. Where she works, where she lives, who her family members are, what her daily routine looks like. Everything. He paused, listening to the response. And I need one more thing, he continued. I need you to find out the exact details of her wedding. The location, the date, the specific time it starts. Get me all of that information as quickly as possible. Another pause. Good. Send everything to me as soon as you have it compiled. He ended the call and set the phone down on his desk. Then he did something he rarely allowed himself to do. He smiled. It was not a kind smile or a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who had just set a very specific plan into motion, and who knew that plan was going to change absolutely everything. 2 weeks passed in careful preparation. Shin Dae-young received the information he had requested within 3 days. Chioma worked at a marketing firm downtown. She lived in a small apartment on the east side of the city. Her parents lived 20 minutes away in a modest neighborhood. She had 2 sisters and a brother. She went to the same coffee shop every morning before work. She was organized and punctual, and from what his people could observe, she was still going through with the wedding despite what had happened at the cafe. That last detail confirmed what Shin Dae-young had suspected. She was rationalizing Trevor's behavior, making excuses for him, convincing herself it would not happen again. He had seen it before. He understood it, and he was going to make absolutely certain it stopped. The wedding invitation sat on his desk. Cream cardstock with elegant gold lettering. St. Mary's Church. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He had stared at it for a long time after it arrived. Then he had made another phone call, this one to a lawyer he kept on retainer for situations that required discretion. I need a marriage license, Shin Dae-young had said. I need it to be completely legal and official in every way. But I need it to be ready in less than a week. That is impossible under normal circumstances, the lawyer had replied. I am aware. That is why I am calling you instead of going through normal circumstances. There had been a pause on the other end of the line. This will be expensive. Money is not a concern. Get it done. 3 days later, the license had been delivered to his office in a sealed envelope. He had opened it and reviewed every line carefully. Everything was in order. Everything was legal. All it needed was 2 signatures and a witness. But before any of that could happen, there was one more thing he needed to do. On the Saturday before the wedding, Shin Dae-young drove to the neighborhood where Chioma's parents lived. Park drove the car while Shin Dae-young sat in the back seat, watching the houses pass by through the tinted window. They were modest homes with small yards and cars parked in driveways. This was a neighborhood where people worked hard and saved carefully and hoped their children would have better lives than they had. The car pulled up in front of a pale blue house with white trim. There was a small garden in the front yard with roses that were just beginning to bloom. "Wait here," Shin Dae-young said to Park as he opened the car door. He walked up the front path and knocked on the door. He could hear movement inside the house, footsteps approaching. The door opened to reveal a tall man in his late 50s with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. He looked Shin Dae-young up and down with obvious suspicion. "Can I help you?" the man asked. "My name is Shin Dae-young," Shin Dae-young said. "I need to speak with you about your daughter Chioma. It is urgent." The man's expression darkened immediately. "What about my daughter? May I come inside? This is not a conversation that should happen on your doorstep." The man hesitated for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if this stranger was a threat. Then he stepped aside and gestured for Shin Dae-young to enter. The inside of the house was warm and lived in. Family photos covered the walls in mismatched frames. There was a comfortable-looking couch with a handmade blanket draped over the back. Everything about the space spoke of love and care and years of building a life together. A woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She stopped when she saw Shin Dae-young standing in her living room. Her eyes went wide with confusion. "Who is this?" she asked her husband. "He says he needs to talk about Chioma," the man replied. The woman's hand flew to her chest. "Is she hurt? Did something happen?" "She is not hurt," Shin Dae-young said quickly. "At least not physically. But I need to speak with both of you about her upcoming wedding." The man gestured to the couch. "Sit down, and then you can explain what this is about." They all sat down, Chioma's parents on the couch, and Shin Dae-young in the armchair across from them. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, to figure out exactly how to explain what he was about to tell them. "Your daughter is getting married in 1 week to a man named Trevor," he began. "We know that," Chioma's mother said. "We are her parents. We have been helping her plan the wedding for months." "Then you should also know what kind of man he is," Shin Dae-young said. Chioma's father frowned deeply. "What are you talking about? What do you know about Trevor?" "I know that he is abusive," Shin Dae-young said bluntly. "Not just physically, but emotionally. He tears her down. He makes her feel worthless. He humiliates her in public." Chioma's mother's face went pale. "How do you know this? Who are you?" Shin Dae-young described what he had witnessed at the cafe 2 weeks earlier. He told them about the orange juice, about the cruel words, about the way everyone had watched and done nothing. He watched their faces as he spoke, saw the shock and anger and guilt bloom across their features. "Why are you telling us this?" Chioma's father asked when Shin Dae-young had finished. His voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "Because Trevor owes me a significant amount of money," Shin Dae-young said. $173,000 to be exact. "And I have made him a deal. I will forgive his entire debt if he walks away from your daughter." Chioma's mother stood up abruptly. "You are paying him to leave her?" "I am giving him a way out of a debt that would otherwise destroy him," Shin Dae-young corrected. "And in exchange, I am removing him from your daughter's life permanently." "But he agreed to this?" Chioma's father asked. "He did. He will walk away from her at the wedding itself. He will humiliate her in front of everyone. It will be brutal and it will be public, but it will also be final. She will see exactly who he is, and she will not take him back when he tries to return." Chioma's father stood up as well, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You want us to just stand by and let our daughter be humiliated in front of 300 people. I want you to let her be free," Shin Dae-young said, and he stood to face them. "Because if you stop this wedding yourself, if you convince her to call it off, she will always wonder if she made a mistake. She will always think about what could have been. But if he shows her who he truly is in a way she cannot deny or rationalize, then she will be able to move forward. And what happens after he humiliates her? Chioma's mother asked. Her voice was shaking. She will be standing there alone and broken. What then? Then I will step in, Shin Dae-young said. I will marry her instead. The room went completely silent. Chioma's mother sank back down onto the couch as if her legs had given out. You will what? I will marry her. I have already obtained a marriage license. I have everything prepared. When Trevor walks away, I will take his place at the altar. And she will not have to walk out of that church alone and destroyed. Chioma's father shook his head slowly. This is absolutely insane. You are a complete stranger to her. Why would you do any of this? Because I saw what he did to her in that cafe, Shin Dae-young said. And I will not stand by and let it happen again. There has to be more to it than that, Chioma's father said. No one does something this extreme just out of kindness. What do you really want from our daughter? Shin Dae-young reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He set it on the coffee table between them. There is $50,000 in that envelope. For the wedding expenses. For whatever she needs after this is over. Take it. Chioma's mother picked up the envelope with trembling hands. She opened it and looked inside, and her eyes went wide when she saw the stack of bills. We do not want your money, Chioma's father said firmly. It is not for you, Shin Dae-young said. It is for her. To make sure she has choices. To make sure she has options when this is over. He turned toward the door and Park, who had been waiting outside, opened it at exactly the right moment. Wait, Chioma's mother called out. If you do this, if you really marry her, what happens after? What do you want from her? Shin Dae-young paused with his hand on the doorframe and looked back at her. I want nothing from her. I only want to give her the chance at something better than what she has now. But you will be her husband, Chioma's father said. You will have legal rights. You will have power over her life. I will give her a safe place to land, Shin Dae-young said. And when she is ready, when she has had time to heal and figure out what she truly wants, I will give her the choice to stay or to leave. The decision will be entirely hers. He walked out before they could ask any more questions. Behind him, Chioma's parents stood in their living room, holding an envelope full of money and trying to process what had just happened. Should we tell her? Chioma's mother whispered. Should we warn her about what is going to happen? Chioma's father was quiet for a very long time. He looked down at the envelope in his wife's hands, then at the door where the stranger had just disappeared. No, he said finally. If we tell her, she will not go through with the wedding. She will cancel it herself to avoid the embarrassment. And then she will spend months or years trying to work things out with Trevor, convincing herself that he can change. She needs to see the truth. She needs to have her eyes opened in a way that she cannot ignore. But that man Shin Dae-young, Chioma's mother said. We do not know him. We do not know what he really wants from her. I know, her husband said. But did you see his eyes when he talked about what happened at the cafe? Did you see the way his hands shook when he described it? What are you saying? I am saying that whatever his reasons are, I think he genuinely wants to help her. And right now, that might be the best option we have. Chioma's mother looked down at the money again. This feels wrong. All of this feels wrong, her husband agreed. But sometimes wrong is the only path to right. They stood there together in silence, both of them hoping desperately that they were making the right choice, both of them knowing they would not find out until it was far too late to change course. The next 7 days passed slowly for Shin Dae-young. He went through his normal routines, attended his usual meetings, handled his business affairs with his typical efficiency. But his mind was always partially elsewhere, always thinking about what was coming, always preparing for the moment when everything would change. On the morning of the wedding, he woke early. He showered and dressed carefully in the same black suit he had worn to Chioma's parents' house. He put on his glasses and looked at himself in the mirror. He looked calm and composed, exactly as he needed to look. But inside, his heart was racing. Park drove him to the church. They arrived 30 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The parking lot was already filling up with cars. Guests were streaming into the building in their formal clothes, chattering excitedly about the wedding they were about to witness. Shin Dae-young stayed in the car and watched them go inside. "Are you certain about this, sir?" Park asked from the driver's seat. "I am certain," Shin Dae-young replied. "Once you walk through those doors, there will be no turning back." "I know." Park nodded and said nothing more. They waited. At exactly 3 o'clock, the church bells began to ring. Shin Dae-young checked his watch. Any moment now, the ceremony would be starting. Chioma would be walking down the aisle in her wedding dress. Trevor would be standing at the altar waiting for her. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Shin Dae-young got out of the car. Park followed him. They walked across the parking lot toward the church entrance. The doors were closed, but Shin Dae-young could hear music playing inside. The wedding march. It had started. He waited outside the doors with Park standing silently beside him. He counted the seconds in his head. The processional would take about 3 minutes. Then there would be a few moments of silence as the priest began the ceremony. And then Trevor would do exactly what Shin Dae-young had paid him to do. Inside the church, Chioma stood at the altar in her white dress. The music had stopped playing 30 seconds ago. The church was full of people, 300 faces all turned toward her. Her bridesmaids stood behind her in their matching pink dresses. Trevor stood in front of her in his tuxedo. And then everything started to fall apart. 6 months later, Chioma was standing in the living room of the penthouse she now shared with Shin Dae-young. The afternoon sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making everything look warm and golden. She had been folding laundry when the doorbell rang, which was unusual because most people had to be cleared by security downstairs before they could even get to the elevator. She walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Her blood turned to ice. Trevor was standing in the hallway. She opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. "What are you doing here? How did you even get up here?" "I need to talk to you," Trevor said. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. "Please, Chioma. Just 5 minutes. That is all I am asking." "No. You need to leave right now." "You do not understand," Trevor said, and his voice was getting louder, more desperate. "You do not know the truth about what happened. About why I did what I did. I know enough. Now leave before I call security." "He paid me," Trevor shouted. The words burst out of him like they had been building up pressure for months. "Shin Dae-young paid me to leave you. He orchestrated the entire thing." Chioma felt the world tilt sideways. "What did you just say?" "He paid me to walk away from you," Trevor said, speaking rapidly now. "He threatened me. He said if I did not humiliate you at the wedding, he would destroy me. He had it all planned out. The marriage license, everything. He manipulated both of us." Chioma's hands started shaking where they gripped the door. "You are lying." "I am not lying. I swear to God, I am not. I owed him money. I do not even remember anymore. But he wanted you from the beginning. He saw you at that cafe, and he decided he was going to have you no matter what it took." The elevator dinged behind Trevor. Shin Dae-young stepped out into the hallway. He stopped when he saw Trevor standing at his door. His expression went dark, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "You need to leave," Shin Dae-young said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made Trevor take a step backward. "Right now." "I am telling her the truth," Trevor said. "She deserves to know what you did." "The truth?" Shin Dae-young took a step forward. "The truth is that you are an abusive coward who was destroying her piece by piece. I gave you money to walk away from someone you did not deserve. That is the truth. You manipulated everything." Trevor shouted. "You paid me to humiliate her. You planned the entire wedding disaster." Chioma unlocked the chain and pulled the door open all the way. She looked between Trevor and Shin Dae-young, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Is it true?" she asked Shin Dae-young. Her voice was shaking. "Did you pay him to leave me?" Shin Dae-young turned to look at her. For the first time since she had met him, he looked uncertain. Vulnerable. "Yes," he said quietly. The single word hit Chioma like a physical blow. She took a step backward into the apartment. "You planned all of this? I saw what he was doing to you at that cafe. I could not let it continue. So you decided to play God with my life?" Chioma's voice was rising now, tears starting to stream down her face. You decided that you knew what was best for me. I was trying to help you. By manipulating me? By lying to me for 6 months. I never lied to you, Shin Dae-young said, but his voice lacked conviction. You never told me the truth. Chioma shouted. That is the same thing. You let me believe that you just happened to be there that day. That you just decided to help me out of kindness. But you planned it. You orchestrated everything. Trevor was still standing in the hallway, watching them with something that looked almost like satisfaction on his face. Shin Dae-young saw the expression and his jaw tightened. He turned to Trevor. Get out of here. Now. I am not going anywhere until she knows everything, Trevor said. If you do not leave right now, I will have you physically removed from this building, Shin Dae-young said. Go ahead. Call your people. Let her see exactly who you really are. Shin Dae-young moved so fast that Trevor did not have time to react. 1 second he was standing in the doorway, and the next Shin Dae-young had him by the collar and was shoving him backward into the hallway. Trevor stumbled and hit the wall hard enough to make a thudding sound. You came here to destroy what we have built, Shin Dae-young said. His voice was low and dangerous. But you are too late. She is my wife. She chose me. And you will never touch her life again. He shoved Trevor one more time, hard, and Trevor went stumbling down the hallway toward the elevator. Shin Dae-young turned back to the apartment. Chioma was standing just inside the doorway, staring at him like she did not recognize him. Do not look at me like that, Shin Dae-young said quietly. Like what? Like you are afraid of me. Maybe I should be afraid of you, Chioma said. Her voice was trembling with emotion. Maybe I should have been afraid from the very beginning. I do not even know who you are. You do know me. No. I know the version of you that you wanted me to see. I do not know the man who manipulates people and threatens them and orchestrates entire scenarios just to get what he wants. Shin Dae-young took a step toward her, and she took a step back. The movement was instinctive, and she saw the way it made him flinch. Everything I did to protect you, he said. I did not ask you to protect me. Chioma shouted. I did not ask you to save me. You took away my choice. Your choice was to marry a man who was destroying you. That was my choice to make. Not yours. They stood there staring at each other across the entryway. The air between them felt charged and dangerous, like a storm about to break. Why? Chioma asked finally, and her voice broke on the word. Why did you really do it? And do not tell me it was just to save me. There has to be more to it than that. Shin Dae-young was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I saw you in that cafe, sitting there with juice in your hair while everyone watched and did nothing, I saw myself. Chioma's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? I saw every moment I have ever felt small, Shin Dae-young said. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Every moment I have been humiliated. Every moment I have been invisible to the people who were supposed to care. I grew up in a world where showing weakness meant death, where you had to hide everything you felt. And when I saw you hurting, when I saw everyone doing nothing, I could not just walk away. Tears were streaming down Chioma's face now. So you decided to manipulate me instead? I decided to give you a way out. Even if the method was questionable. Even if it was wrong. I decided that you deserved better than what you had. You should have told me the truth. Would you have believed me? Shin Dae-young asked. If I had come to you before the wedding and told you that Trevor was using you, that he did not love you, would you have listened to me? Chioma wanted to say yes. But she knew the truth. She would not have listened. She would have defended Trevor. Made excuses for him. Convinced herself it was not that bad. That does not make what you did right, she said quietly. I know it does not. I do not know if I can trust you after this. Something in Shin Dae-young's expression cracked. Just for a moment, she saw the vulnerability beneath all the control. The fear. What are you saying? I am saying I need time. I need space. I need to figure out if this is something I can forgive. Chioma. No, she said, and she held up her hand. You do not get to make this decision for me. Not this time. This is my choice to make. Shin Dae-young stood there in the middle of the living room looking more lost than she had ever seen him. What do you want me to do? He asked quietly. I want you to leave. Go to a hotel. Go anywhere. But I need you to not be here right now. This is my home. It is our home, Chioma corrected. And I am asking you to leave. Can you do that for me? Can you give me this one thing without trying to control it or manipulate it? Shin Dae-young looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. He walked to the bedroom and came back a few minutes later with a small overnight bag. He stopped at the door and looked back at her. For what it is worth, he said quietly, I love you. I have loved you since the moment I saw you in that cafe. And everything I did, no matter how wrong it was, came from that place. He walked out before she could respond. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. Chioma stood alone in the penthouse that had been her home for the past 6 months. The afternoon light was still streaming through the windows, but somehow the space felt colder now. Emptier. She walked to the couch and sat down. She pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. And then she let herself fall apart completely. She cried for the woman she had been before Trevor. She cried for the woman she had become after Shin Dae-young. She cried for all the choices that had been taken from her and all the choices she still had to make. She cried until there were no more tears left. Then she picked up her phone with shaking hands. She dialed her mother's number. It rang twice before her mother answered. Chioma? Sweetheart, is everything okay? No, Chioma said. Her voice was hoarse from crying. Everything is not okay. I need to come home. Just for a few days. Can I do that? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Of course you can come home. What happened? I found out the truth, Chioma said. About everything. About what Shin Dae-young did. About the wedding. About all of it. Another pause. This one was longer. Heavier. We were going to tell you, her mother said finally, and her voice was quiet and filled with guilt. Chioma felt like someone had punched her in the chest. All the air left her lungs at once. You knew? The words came out as barely a whisper. He came to see us before the wedding. He told us what he was planning. He asked us not to stop it. He gave us money to help with the expenses and to make sure you would be taken care of afterward. Chioma started laughing, but there was no humor in the sound. It was bitter and broken and hollow. You knew, she repeated. Everyone knew. Everyone made choices about my life except for me. We thought we were protecting you, her mother said, and now she was crying too. We thought it was the only way to save you from Trevor. We thought. Chioma hung up. She sat there staring at the phone in her hand like it was a foreign object she had never seen before. Everyone had betrayed her. Trevor. Shin Dae-young. Her own parents. Every single person she had trusted had lied to her face while making decisions about her future behind her back. She stood up and walked to the bedroom. She started throwing clothes into a bag. She did not fold them. She did not organize them. She just grabbed things and shoved them in. She needed to leave. She needed to get out of this penthouse that suddenly felt like a beautiful prison. She needed to find herself again, to figure out who she was when no one else was telling her what to think or feel or do. She finished packing. She grabbed her bag and walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle and looked back at the penthouse one last time. At the life she had built here over the past 6 months. At the man she had fallen in love with despite everything. Part of her wanted to stay. Wanted to forgive. Wanted to believe that love was enough to overcome all the lies and manipulation. But another part of her knew that if she stayed right now, without truly processing everything that had happened, she would always wonder. She would always doubt. She would always feel like she was living someone else's life instead of her own. She needed to choose for herself. For once in her life, she needed to make a decision that was completely and entirely hers, with no one pushing her or manipulating her or trying to save her. She opened the door and walked out. The penthouse stood empty behind her. Across the city, in a hotel room, Shin Dae-young sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. His phone sat on the nightstand beside him, and he kept looking at it, hoping it would ring, hoping she would call, hoping she would tell him to come back. But it stayed silent. He had lost her. After everything he had done to save her, after all the planning and manipulation and careful orchestration, he had lost her anyway. The irony was not lost on him. He had tried to protect her from being hurt, and in doing so, he had become the one who hurt her most. 3 days passed in a blur. Chioma checked into a small hotel on the other side of the city under a fake name. She turned off her phone and spent the time walking through parks and sitting in cafes and trying to remember who she had been before Trevor, before Shin Dae-young, before all of it. On the 4th day, there was a knock on her hotel room door. She looked through the peephole and saw her younger sister standing in the hallway. Chioma opened the door. "How did you find me?" Her sister smiled. "You are my sister. I always know where you are. Also, you use the credit card that is linked to my account, so that helped." She walked into the room without waiting for an invitation and sat down on the bed. She looked at Chioma with concern and love and a directness that had always been her trademark. "You look terrible," her sister said. "Thank you so much for that. Have you eaten anything in the past 3 days?" "Not really." Her sister stood up and grabbed Chioma's jacket from the chair. "Come on. We're going to get food, and you're going to tell me everything." They went to a small restaurant a few blocks away. They ordered way too much food and sat in a corner booth where no one would bother them. And Chioma told her sister everything. About the cafe. About Trevor's debt. About Shin Dae-young's plan. About her parents' involvement. About the lies and the manipulation and the betrayal that seemed to come from every direction. Her sister listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. She just ate her food and nodded, and let Chioma talk until there were no more words left. When Chioma finally finished, her sister took a long sip of her water and set the glass down carefully. "Okay," she said. "I am going to say something you are not going to like. That seems to be a theme lately. He was wrong to manipulate you the way he did. Your parents were wrong to keep it from you. All of that is absolutely true. But what? But do you actually wish you had married Trevor?" Chioma opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Because the truth was, she did not wish that. She did not wish she was living the life she would have had with Trevor. She did not wish she had never met Shin Dae-young. "That is not the point," Chioma said. "Is it not, though?" her sister asked. "I mean, yes, the way it happened was completely messed up. No question about that. But the outcome is that you are happier now than you were with Trevor. Are you not?" Chioma looked down at her hands, which were wrapped around her coffee cup. She thought about the past 6 months with Shin Dae-young. The way he had looked at her every morning like she was the most important thing in his world. The way he had listened to her talk about her day. The way he had defended her when his own family had tried to tear her down. The way he had held her when she cried and made her laugh when she was sad. "I am happier," Chioma admitted quietly. "But that does not mean what he did was right." "No, it does not," her sister agreed. "But it also does not mean you have to throw everything away because of how it started. How can I trust him after this?" "Can you trust yourself?" her sister asked. Chioma looked up. "What do you mean? You spend so much energy worrying about whether other people are lying to you or manipulating you. But the real question is whether you can trust yourself. Can you trust your own judgment about who he is now? Not who he was 6 months ago when he made those questionable choices, but the man you have been living with. The man you fell in love with. Can you trust yourself about him?" Chioma was quiet. The question settled over her like a weight. Her sister reached across the table and took her hand. "I am not saying you have to forgive him right away. I am not saying you have to go back. But I am saying that you cannot spend the rest of your life running from every relationship just because it did not start perfectly. Nothing starts perfectly. And sometimes the best things come from the messiest beginnings. What if I go back and he hurts me again? Then you leave," her sister said simply. "But at least you will know. At least you will have given it a real chance based on your own choice, not based on fear or anger or someone else's manipulation." They sat in silence for a moment, and then her sister squeezed her hand. "Whatever you decide, I am here. I am on your side. Always." "Okay." Chioma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. That night, back in her hotel room, Chioma turned her phone back on for the first time in days. The screen lit up with notifications. 47 missed calls. Most of them from Shin Dae-young. 17 voicemails. She listened to the first one. "Chioma, it is me. Please call me back. I just want to know that you are safe." The second one. I am sorry. I know that does not fix anything, but I am sorry. The third one. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am just asking you to let me know you are okay. Please. She skipped ahead to the most recent voicemail, which had come in this morning. I understand if you do not want to see me again. I understand if this is over. But please just send me a message. Just let me know you are alive. That is all I am asking. His voice sounded broken, defeated. Nothing like the controlled, confident man she had come to know. Chioma sat on the edge of the hotel bed with the phone pressed to her ear, and she felt something shift inside her chest. She thought about everything her sister had said. About trust. About choice. About not running away from something good just because it had a messy beginning. She picked up her phone and typed out a message. I am okay. I need a few more days. But I am okay. She hit send. 3 seconds later, her phone rang. It was him. She answered. Chioma. His voice was rough, like he had not slept in days. Where are you? I am safe. That is all you need to know right now. Are you coming back? She was quiet for a long moment. I do not know yet. She could hear him take a shaky breath on the other end of the line. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, I can accept that. I need you to answer something honestly for me. Anything. If you could go back and do it all differently, would you? Shin Dae-young was silent. She could hear him breathing, could almost feel him thinking through his answer carefully. No, he said finally. I would not. Chioma's chest tightened. Even knowing it would hurt me? I would do it differently, Shin Dae-young clarified. I would tell you the truth sooner. I would give you more agency in the decisions. I would be honest from the beginning. But would I still intervene to save you from Trevor? Yes. Every time. I would do it every single time. Why? Because I cannot watch someone I care about be destroyed and do nothing about it. That is not who I am. Even if it costs me everything. Even if it costs me you. Chioma closed her eyes. Tears slid down her cheeks. I do not know if that makes you noble or just controlling, she said quietly. Probably both, he admitted. Despite everything, she almost smiled. I am going to hang up now, she said. Okay, but I will call you tomorrow. She could hear the relief in his voice. Okay, Dae-young. Yes, I do love you. I am still angry. I am still hurt. But I do love you. There was a long pause. Then his voice quiet and raw with emotion. I love you too. She hung up and lay back on the bed. She stared at the ceiling and let the tears fall. She did not know what she was going to do. She did not know if she could forgive him. She did not know if they had a future together. But for the first time in days, she felt like maybe she could breathe again. 5 more days passed. Chioma spent them thinking, walking, talking to her sister, processing everything that had happened, trying to figure out what she truly wanted when all the anger and hurt and betrayal were stripped away. On the 10th day after she had left, she went back to the penthouse. She did not tell Shin Dae-young she was coming. She just showed up with her bag and her key. She unlocked the door and walked inside. Shin Dae-young was sitting on the couch. He had papers spread out on the coffee table in front of him, and he looked like he had not slept properly in days. There were dark circles under his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was messy. He looked up when he heard the door open, and he stood up immediately. They stared at each other across the living room. You came back, Shin Dae-young said. His voice was careful, uncertain. I came back, Chioma confirmed. Does that mean? It means I want to try, Chioma said. But there are conditions. Shin Dae-young nodded. Anything. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more making decisions for me without my input. If we are going to do this, we do it as equals. As partners. You do not get to decide what is best for me. Agreed. And you have to fix whatever you did to Trevor. Shin Dae-young's expression darkened slightly. What do you mean? I mean you threatened him. You manipulated him. You used his debt as leverage. And even though I hate him for what he did, I do not want that hanging over us. So you need to fix it. You need to forgive his debt completely and make sure he is free from you. Shin Dae-young was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, I will take care of it today. And one more thing. What? You have to tell me everything. About your organization. About your family. About your past. All of it. No more secrets. That will take time. We have time, Chioma said. Shin Dae-young walked across the room slowly. He stopped in front of her, but he did not touch her. He just looked at her. I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you, he said quietly. I do not want you to spend your life making it up to me, Chioma said. I want you to spend your life being honest with me and treating me as an equal. That is all I want. He nodded. I can do that. She reached out and took his hand. He looked down at their joined hands like it was the most precious thing in the world. Like he had thought he would never get to hold her hand again. I missed you, he said quietly. I missed you too. He pulled her into his arms then, and she let him. She wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. They stood there in the middle of the living room for a long time, just holding each other. It was not fixed. It was not perfect. There was still so much they needed to work through. But it was a start, and sometimes a start was enough. Over the next 3 months, Shin Dae-young kept every promise he had made. The first thing he did was call Trevor. Chioma was sitting in the living room when he made the call, and Shin Dae-young put it on speaker, so she could hear everything. He told Trevor that the debt was completely forgiven, that there would be no more threats, and that as long as Trevor stayed away from Chioma, they would never have contact again. Trevor had been silent for a long moment, and then he had said a quiet thank you and hung up. Chioma never heard from him again. The second thing Shin Dae-young did was tell her everything. They started couples counseling at Chioma's request. It was her idea, and Shin Dae-young had been skeptical at first, but he had agreed because he had promised to listen to her. They sat in a small office once a week with a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma, and they talked about trust and control, and how to build something healthy out of such a complicated beginning. But the real conversations happened at home, late at night when they were sitting on the couch or lying in bed. Shin Dae-young told her about his childhood growing up in a powerful Korean family that valued strength above everything else. He told her about the expectations that had been placed on him from the moment he was born. He told her about the first time he had seen violence, the first time he had been forced to participate in it, the first time he had realized that the world he lived in was nothing like the world most people knew. He told her about his organization, about the businesses they ran that existed in the gray spaces between legal and illegal. He told her about the gambling operations and the import businesses that did not always go through proper channels. He told her about the protection rackets and the money laundering and all the things he had done to build his empire. He told her about the people who worked for him, about their loyalty and their code. He told her about Park, who had saved his life twice and who he trusted more than anyone else in the world. He told her about the others who had been with him for years, who had chosen to follow him even when it meant putting their own lives at risk. And he told her about his family. His father was the head of one of the oldest and most powerful Korean crime families in the country. His mother came from another powerful family, and their marriage had been arranged to strengthen alliances between the two groups. Shin Dae-young had been raised to take over the family business, but he had wanted something different. He had wanted to build his own organization, to do things his own way. His family had seen this as betrayal, and they had disowned him when he was 25 years old. He had not spoken to them in 7 years. Until now. Because 3 months after Chioma came back, Shin Dae-young's phone rang with a number he had not seen in years. It was his brother. Shin Dae-young stared at the phone for a long moment before answering. Chioma was sitting beside him on the couch, and she watched as his expression shifted from surprise to wariness to resignation. Hyung, Shin Dae-young said when he answered. It was the Korean word for older brother. The conversation was brief and conducted entirely in Korean. Chioma could not understand the words, but she could hear the tension in Shin Dae-young's voice. When he hung up, he sat there in silence for a long moment. What did he want? Chioma asked. My family has heard that I got married, Shin Dae-young said. They want to meet you. Chioma felt her stomach drop. Your family? The ones who disowned you? Yes. Why do they want to meet me now? Because in their world, marriage is about power and alliances. They want to see who I chose and whether that choice affects their position. What happens if we say no? Shin Dae-young looked at her, and there was something heavy in his expression. Then it will be seen as an insult. And in my world, insults have consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that could put both of us in danger. Chioma took a deep breath. So we do not really have a choice. We always have a choice, Shin Dae-young said. But some choices come with higher costs than others. They talked about it for hours. Shin Dae-young explained exactly what meeting his family would mean, what kind of people they were, what she should expect. He warned her that they would not accept her easily, that they would see her as beneath their family's status, that they would say things designed to hurt and belittle her. I will be there beside you the entire time, he promised. And if they cross a line, we leave. I do not care what the consequences are. Chioma nodded slowly. Okay, I will meet them. The dinner was arranged for the following week at an exclusive restaurant that normal people could not even make reservations at. Chioma spent days preparing, trying to figure out what to wear, how to act, what to say. Shin Dae-young coached her on Korean customs and etiquette, but he also told her to be herself. They will try to make you feel small, he said. Do not let them. You are my equal in every way, and I will make sure they understand that. The night of the dinner arrived too quickly. Chioma wore a simple black dress that was elegant without being flashy. She kept her jewelry minimal. Shin Dae-young wore a perfectly tailored suit, and they drove to the restaurant in silence, both of them preparing for what was coming. The restaurant had a private room reserved for them. Security stood at the door, and they were escorted inside by a host who treated Shin Dae-young with a deference that bordered on fear. 3 people were already seated at the table when they arrived. Shin Dae-young's father sat at the head of the table. He was in his late 60s with gray hair and eyes that looked like they had seen too much and forgiven too little. He was wearing an expensive suit, and everything about him radiated cold authority. His mother sat to his father's right. She was perfectly put together, from her hair to her makeup to her designer dress. Her posture was impeccable, and her face showed no emotion whatsoever. Shin Dae-young's brother sat across from their mother. He was a few years older than Shin Dae-young, and they looked similar enough that Chioma could see the family resemblance immediately. But where Shin Dae-young's eyes sometimes softened when he looked at her, his brother's eyes were hard and calculating. Father, mother, Hyung, Shin Dae-young said, and he gave a small formal bow. This is my wife, Chioma. Chioma bowed as well, exactly the way Shin Dae-young had taught her. None of them stood up. None of them smiled. Sit, Shin Dae-young's father said, and it was clearly a command, not an invitation. They sat down at the only 2 empty chairs. Shin Dae-young's hand found Chioma's under the table and gave it a reassuring squeeze. The first part of the dinner was filled with polite small talk that felt anything but polite. They discussed business and politics and things that Chioma had no context for. She stayed quiet, eating her food carefully and watching the dynamics play out around her. And then Shin Dae-young's mother turned her attention directly to Chioma. So, she said, and her voice was pleasant, but there was ice underneath it. Tell us about your family, Chioma. What do they do? My father is an accountant, Chioma said. My mother is a teacher. How ordinary, his mother said, and the word was clearly meant as an insult. Shin Dae-young's hand tightened around Chioma's under the table, but she squeezed back, silently telling him she could handle this. They are good people who work hard, Chioma said calmly. I am very proud of them. And what do you do? Shin Dae-young's brother asked. I work in marketing. He made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Marketing. How ambitious. She is very good at what she does, Shin Dae-young said, and there was an edge to his voice that had not been there before. I am sure she is, his mother said. But it is hardly the kind of background we would have chosen for our son. It is a good thing it is not your choice then, Shin Dae-young said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. His father set down his glass very deliberately. You forget yourself, Dae-young. I forget nothing. You disowned me 7 years ago, remember? Which means my choices are no longer your concern. You are still part of this family whether you like it or not, his father said. And your actions reflect on all of us. My marriage to Chioma reflects nothing except my own happiness. His mother laughed, and it was a cold, brittle sound. Happiness. How very American of you. How very weak. That was when Chioma spoke up, surprising even herself. I am sorry if my presence here offends you, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. But I love your son. And he loves me. We are building a life together based on honesty and mutual respect. You can either accept that or not, but you do not get to make us feel ashamed of it. Shin Dae-young's mother's eyes narrowed dangerously. You have quite a mouth on you for someone in your position. I have a voice, Chioma corrected, and I am not afraid to use it. Shin Dae-young's brother actually smiled at that, though it did not reach his eyes. She has spirit. I will give her that. Spirit is not the same as respect, his father said. He looked at Chioma with barely concealed contempt. You do not belong in our world, girl. You are a distraction. A phase. And when my son comes to his senses, you will be discarded like the mistake you are. Shin Dae-young stood up so fast that his chair fell backward with a loud crash. The entire restaurant went silent. Do not speak to her that way, Shin Dae-young said. His voice was low and dangerous in a way that Chioma had never heard before. I will speak however I want, his father said, not standing, not showing any sign that he was intimidated. Then we are done here. Shin Dae-young held out his hand to Chioma. Let's go. Chioma took his hand and stood up. They started walking toward the door together. If you walk out that door, you are making a choice, his father called after them. You are choosing her over your family, over your legacy, over everything you were born to be. Shin Dae-young stopped. He turned back to look at his father, and there was something final in his expression. I made that choice the day I married her, he said. And I would make it again. Every single time. He led Chioma out of the private room, through the restaurant, and out into the cool night air. They walked to the car in silence. Shin Dae-young opened the door for her, and she slid into the passenger seat. He got in the driver's side and just sat there for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Are you okay? Chioma asked quietly. I am okay, he said, but his voice was tight. Are you? I am okay too. He started the car and pulled out into traffic. They drove in silence for a while, both of them processing what had just happened. They really hate me, Chioma said finally. They do not know you. If they knew you, they would see what I see. Chioma smiled sadly. I do not think that is true, but I appreciate you saying it. Shin Dae-young reached over and took her hand. I meant what I said in there. I choose you. Over them. Over everything. That is a lot of pressure to put on a person. It is not pressure. It is just the truth. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, their hands still linked together. But even as they pulled into the parking garage of their building, Chioma had a sinking feeling that the dinner had set something in motion. Something that was going to have consequences they could not yet see. She was right. 2 weeks later, Shin Dae-young came home looking more serious than she had ever seen him. He sat down on the couch and gestured for her to sit beside him. When she did, he took both of her hands in his. My organization has given me an ultimatum, he said without preamble. Chioma felt her heart start to race. What kind of ultimatum? Either I leave you, or I leave the organization. The words hung in the air between them. What? Chioma whispered. Why? My family has put pressure on the leadership. They have made it very clear that they do not approve of our marriage. And the leadership does not want internal conflict between families. So they are forcing me to choose. And if you choose me, then I walk away from everything. The business. The money. The power. All of it. Chioma pulled her hands away from his. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Dae-young, you cannot do that. Why not? Because it is your whole life. It is everything you have built. No, Shin Dae-young said. He stood up and walked over to her. You are my life now. Everything else is just what I do to make money. But if you leave, will they not come after you? Will there not be consequences? Probably. Then we cannot do this. I cannot ask you to give up everything for me. You are not asking, Shin Dae-young said. I have already made my decision. I told them this morning. I am out. Chioma spun around to face him. You what? I told them I am leaving. I am done with the organization. I am done with that life. Where will we go? What will we do? I have been thinking about that, Shin Dae-young said. I have money saved that is completely separate from the organization. Investments that they cannot touch. We have enough to live comfortably for the rest of our lives without ever working again. But where would we live? We cannot stay here if your organization and your family are both angry with you. No, we cannot stay here, Shin Dae-young agreed. Which is why I think we should leave the country entirely. Chioma stared at him. Leave the country? I have been looking at properties in the United States, specifically in Portland, Oregon. It is a city where we could disappear, where we could start over completely, where no one knows who we are or where we came from. You want to move to America? I want to go wherever you feel safe, Shin Dae-young said. If that is America, then that is where we go. If it is somewhere else, we go somewhere else. The location does not matter. What matters is that we are together and we are free from all of this. Chioma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. You would really give up everything? Your whole life here. My whole life here is built on violence and secrets and constantly looking over my shoulder. I would give that up in a heartbeat for a chance at something real with you. She threw her arms around him and held on tight. He wrapped his arms around her and buried his face in her hair. Are you sure about this? She whispered. I have never been more sure of anything. They stood there holding each other for a long time. And then they started planning their escape. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of activity. Shin Dae-young quietly liquidated assets that were in his name alone. He transferred money into accounts that could not be traced back to him or his organization. He sold properties and cashed out investments and moved everything into a form that would be accessible from anywhere in the world. At the same time, he was negotiating his exit from the organization. It was not as simple as just walking away. There were debts to be settled, territories to be reassigned, relationships to be carefully managed so that his departure did not create a power vacuum that would lead to violence. Park helped him through all of it. Park was the only person from his old life that Shin Dae-young told about their plans, and Park had nodded and said he understood. He had helped Shin Dae-young navigate the complex politics of leaving an organization that did not typically allow people to leave alive. You are doing the right thing, Park had said one night after a particularly difficult meeting. She is good for you. She makes you more human. I do not know if that is a compliment in this world, Shin Dae-young had replied. It is the highest compliment I can give. Chioma, meanwhile, was handling her own preparations. She quit her job at the marketing firm, telling them she was moving out of the country for personal reasons. She said goodbye to her friends, though she could not tell them the real reason she was leaving. She spent long hours with her family, trying to memorize their faces and their voices and the way they laughed. Her mother cried when Chioma told her they were moving to America. I am losing my daughter, her mother had said. You are not losing me, Chioma had promised. I will visit. We will video chat. You will always be part of my life. But they both knew it would not be the same. 3 months after Shin Dae-young had told his organization he was leaving, they boarded a plane to Portland, Oregon. They left in the middle of the night with just 2 suitcases each. Everything else they owned had either been sold or left behind. They were starting completely over, with nothing but each other and the money Shin Dae-young had managed to save. The flight was long and exhausting. Chioma slept for most of it, her head resting on Shin Dae-young's shoulder. He stayed awake, watching the clouds pass by outside the window and thinking about everything they were leaving behind. When they landed in Portland, it was raining. They took a taxi from the airport to the house that Shin Dae-young had purchased sight unseen based on pictures and a virtual tour. It was in a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs, a modest 2-story home with a small yard and neighbors who minded their own business. It was nothing like the penthouse they had left behind. It was smaller, simpler, and completely anonymous. It was perfect. They spent the first week just settling in. They bought furniture and kitchen supplies and all the small things that make a house feel like a home. They explored the neighborhood and found a coffee shop they liked and a grocery store that carried the ingredients they needed. And slowly, carefully, they started to build a new life. Shin Dae-young got a job consulting for legitimate businesses that needed help with security and risk management. It was boring compared to what he had done before, but it was legal and it paid well enough. Chioma started freelancing as a marketing consultant, working from home and building up a client base one project at a time. They were normal people living a normal life. It was strange at first. Shin Dae-young kept looking over his shoulder, kept waiting for someone from his old life to show up. But weeks passed, and then months, and no one came. His organization had let him go. His family had written him off. They were truly free. 6 months after they moved to Portland, Chioma realized she was pregnant. She had been feeling tired and nauseous for a few weeks, but she had attributed it to stress and the adjustment to their new life. But when she missed her period for the second month in a row, she bought a pregnancy test from the pharmacy down the street. She took the test in the bathroom while Shin Dae-young was at work. When it came back positive, she sat on the edge of the bathtub and stared at it for a long time. She was pregnant. She was going to have a baby. She and Shin Dae-young were going to be parents. The thought was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. When Shin Dae-young came home that evening, Chioma was sitting on the couch with the pregnancy test hidden in her pocket. She had spent all day trying to figure out how to tell him, and she still had not come up with the right words. He walked in and immediately knew something was different. "What is wrong?" he asked. "Nothing is wrong," Chioma said. "I just have something to tell you." He sat down beside her, concern written all over his face. "What is it?" She pulled the pregnancy test out of her pocket and held it out to him. He looked at it for a moment, not understanding. Then recognition dawned, and his eyes went wide. "You are pregnant?" "I am pregnant." He stared at the test, then at her, then back at the test. "We are going to have a baby?" "We are going to have a baby." A smile spread across his face, slow and genuine, and so full of joy that it made Chioma's heart ache. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "We are going to have a baby," he said again, like he could not quite believe it. "Are you happy?" Chioma asked. "I am terrified," he admitted. "But yes, I am so happy." They sat there together, holding each other and thinking about the tiny life that was growing inside her. For the first time in a very long time, everything felt right. The pregnancy progressed normally. Chioma had morning sickness for the first few months, but after that, she felt better than she had in years. They went to doctor's appointments together and picked out names and started setting up a nursery in the spare bedroom. They were happy. They were building a life. They were healing from everything they had been through. And then, one morning when Chioma was 7 months pregnant, everything changed. She had gone to the grocery store to pick up some things for dinner. It was a beautiful day, sunny and warm, and she had decided to walk the few blocks instead of driving. She was pushing her cart through the produce section, trying to decide between 2 different types of apples, when she felt someone watching her. She looked up. A man was standing at the end of the aisle. He was Korean, middle-aged, wearing a suit that was too heavy for the weather. And he was staring directly at her with an expression that made her blood run cold. She had never seen him before in her life, but she knew immediately what he was. He was from Shin Dae-young's old world. The man did not approach her. He just stood there watching her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, took a picture of her, and walked away. Chioma abandoned her cart and ran out of the store. She practically sprinted the 4 blocks back to their house, her heart pounding and her hands shaking. She burst through the front door and immediately locked it behind her. Shin Dae-young was in the kitchen making lunch. He looked up when she came in, and his expression immediately shifted to alarm when he saw her face. "What happened?" "Someone was watching me at the grocery store," Chioma said. Her voice was shaking. "A Korean man in a suit. He took my picture." All the color drained from Shin Dae-young's face. "What did he look like?" She described him as best she could. When she finished, Shin Dae-young closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "That sounds like one of my brother's men." "What does that mean?" "It means they found us." Chioma felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "How is that possible? We were so careful." "I know we were. But my family has resources. They have connections all over the world. If they really wanted to find us, they would eventually succeed." "What do they want?" "I do not know," Shin Dae-young said. "But the fact that they are watching you instead of approaching me directly is not a good sign." He pulled out his phone and called Park. The conversation was brief and conducted in rapid Korean. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Pack a bag, he said. We need to leave. Now. Leave? Where are we going to go? I do not know yet. But we cannot stay here. If they know where we are, then we are not safe. Chioma felt tears start to fall. I thought we were done with this. I thought we were free. Shin Dae-young crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. I am so sorry. I thought we were free too. But I was wrong. They started throwing clothes into bags. Shin Dae-young was moving with the efficiency of someone who had done this before, someone who knew how to disappear quickly and completely. Chioma was moving more slowly, her mind struggling to process what was happening. They had built a life here. They had friends and routines and a nursery that was almost finished. And now they were leaving all of it behind. Just as they were finishing packing, Shin Dae-young's phone rang. It was a number he did not recognize. He answered it anyway, putting it on speaker. Dae-young. The voice on the other end was familiar. It was his brother. Hyung, Shin Dae-young said. What do you want? I want to talk. Just talk. No threats. No violence. Just a conversation between brothers. I do not believe you. I am not asking you to believe me. I am asking you to listen. Shin Dae-young looked at Chioma. She nodded, silently telling him it was okay. I am listening, Shin Dae-young said. Father is dying, his brother said. He has cancer. Stage 4. The doctors say he has maybe 3 months left. Shin Dae-young went very still. I did not know that. How could you? You have been gone for almost a year. But he is dying, and he wants to see you before he goes. He wants to make peace. I do not believe that for a second. Believe what you want, his brother said. But he is dying. And whatever you think of him, he is still your father. Do you really want him to die without seeing you one last time? Shin Dae-young was quiet for a long moment. And what about Chioma? What about my wife? He knows about her. He knows about the baby. He wants to meet them both. So he can insult her again? So he can tell her she is not good enough. So he can try to make amends before he dies. Shin Dae-young looked at Chioma again. She could see the conflict in his eyes. He did not want to go. He did not trust his family. But there was a part of him that still cared, that still wanted his father's approval even after everything that had happened. I will think about it, Shin Dae-young said finally. Do not think too long, his brother said. He does not have much time left. The line went dead. Shin Dae-young set the phone down on the table and put his head in his hands. Chioma walked over to him and put her hand on his shoulder. What do you want to do? I do not know, he said. His voice was muffled. Part of me wants to ignore this completely, to keep running and never look back. But another part of you wants to see your father one more time. Yes. Then we should go. He looked up at her. It could be a trap. It could be, Chioma agreed. But it could also be real. And if it is real, and you do not go, you will regret it for the rest of your life. What about you? What about the baby? I cannot put you in danger. We are already in danger, Chioma said. They found us. They know where we are. Running again is not going to change that. So maybe it is time to stop running and face this head on. Shin Dae-young stood up and cupped her face in his hands. You are the bravest person I have ever met. I am not brave. I am just tired of being afraid. He kissed her forehead gently. Okay, we will go. But we do this carefully. We do this smart. And at the first sign of trouble, we leave. Agreed. Agreed. They finished packing their bags, but instead of running, they started planning their trip back home. Back to the place where everything had started. Back to face the family that had tried to destroy them. And back into the danger that Chioma had hoped they had escaped forever. As she lay in bed that night with Shin Dae-young's hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly, Chioma stared at the ceiling and wondered if they were making the right choice. She wondered if Shin Dae-young's father really was dying, or if this was all an elaborate trap. She wondered if they would make it back to Portland alive. She wondered if their baby would ever get to sleep in the nursery they had worked so hard to create. And most of all, she wondered if the past they had tried so hard to escape would finally catch up with them and destroy everything they had built. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. Part 3 is coming, and I promise you it is going to be explosive. The family confrontation. The truth about whether his father is really dying or if this is all a trap. What happens to the baby? Whether Trevor comes back. All of it gets answered, and the stakes have never been higher. But I need to know what you think. Was Shin Dae-young right to leave everything behind for Chioma? Is going back a trap, or is his father really dying? Should they have kept running, or are they right to face this head on? Comment below with your thoughts. Hit that like button if you want part 3. Subscribe so you do not miss it when it drops. Share this with anyone who loves a good romance with danger and complicated choices. I will see you in the next one.